The ship was dying. Captain Thiel Ramvus stood on the bridge of the Gentle Whisper and watched the warning lights flash across every screen. Red, red, more red. The light from the alerts mixed with the soft blue glow of her own skin, turning everything a strange shade of purple. She pressed 2 of her 4 hands against the console and used the other 2 to rub her temples. "Gorak," she said, keeping her voice calm the way she had been trained. "Give me good news." The chief engineer's face appeared on the communication screen. Gorak was a Dralith, short, wide, with skin like gray stone and 6 small eyes that all blinked at different times. Right now, every single one of those eyes looked exhausted. "There is no good news," Gorak said flatly. "The containment matrix is cracking. I have patched it 9 times already. There is nothing left to patch it with. We have maybe 40 hours before the whole thing falls apart. And when it does, this ship becomes a very pretty explosion." Thiel closed her eyes. The Gentle Whisper was a diplomatic courier vessel. It was built for carrying messages and small cargo between systems. It was not built for running from Krithan raiders, but that was exactly what they had been forced to do 3 days ago. The Krithan patrol had appeared out of nowhere, fired on them without warning, and chased them into an uncharted sector before losing interest. The ship had survived, but barely. "Pickley," Thiel said, turning to her navigation officer. "Where are we?" Pickley was a Essen, small, insectoid, with delicate wings folded against his back and large compound eyes that were currently wide with panic. Pickley was always panicking about something. It was simply his natural state. "We are in an unmapped sector, Captain," Pickley said, his voice thin and fast. "But I have been scanning, and there is a system nearby with signs of civilization. Energy signatures, satellites, structures in orbit." "Which system?" Pickley swallowed. "So, the 3rd planet. It is listed in our old records as a Class 12 pre-contact world. Primitive species. Not yet developed enough for—" "I know what Class 12 means," Thiel said. "It meant the species was young. Tribal, maybe. Early technology at best. The Valkyrie Concord had tagged thousands of such worlds across the galaxy. The rule was simple. Observe from a distance, do not make contact, do not interfere. It was one of the oldest laws of the Concord." "How old are those records?" Thiel asked. Pickley checked. "About 300 years. Thiel stared at him. 300 years was a long time. Species could change a lot in 300 years. But the Concord was a large bureaucracy, and updating surveys of minor planets was not a high priority when there were trade routes to manage and Krithan raiders to worry about." "Captain," Gorak said from the screen, "I do not care what their classification is. We need a port. We need materials. We need someone with a workshop and a basic understanding of energy containment. If these creatures can make fire, I can work with that. If we do not land somewhere in the next 40 hours, we die. It is very simple." Thiel looked at the star map. Sol was close. Everything else was too far. She thought about the regulations. She thought about the reports she would have to file. She thought about the Concord Board of Contact Review and the endless hearings. Then she thought about her crew. 26 people who trusted her to keep them alive. "Set a course for Sol 3, she said quietly. Pickley made a small sound of distress, but obeyed. The Gentle Whisper limped toward the small yellow star and its collection of unremarkable planets. As they got closer, Pickley's readings became more and more confusing. The energy signatures were not what they expected from a primitive world. They were strong, complex. There were thousands of satellites in orbit around the 3rd planet. There were structures, large ones, hanging in space above the world. "Captain," Pickley whispered, "this is not a Class 12 world." Thiel could see that for herself. On the main screen, the planet grew larger. It was blue and green and white, wrapped in clouds, beautiful in the way that living worlds always were. But around it, in orbit, there was a ring of activity that made her stomach drop. Ships, stations, platforms, not crude or simple, advanced, organized, massive. How is this possible? She breathed. Before anyone could answer, every communication channel on the ship activated at once. A voice came through, clear, calm, and speaking in perfect galactic common. Unidentified vessel, this is Earth Orbital Control. We have detected your approach and your ship's distress signatures. Welcome to the Sol System. Do you require assistance? The bridge went completely silent. Thial's skin flickered through 3 different shades of blue. Gorok's 6 eyes went wide on his screen. Pickley stared at his console, then at Thial, then at his console again. Then his wings buzzed once, and he slid sideways off his chair onto the floor in a dead faint. Thial opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She was a trained diplomat. She had negotiated trade agreements and border disputes. She had spoken before the Concord Assembly. But right now, hearing a species that was supposed to be building mud huts speak to her in flawless galactic common, her training failed her completely. This is Captain Thial Ranvos of the Velthary Concord vessel Gentle Whisper. She managed. We have suffered engine damage. Yes, we require assistance. Understood, Captain Ranvos, the voice replied, warm and professional. We are transmitting docking coordinates now. Please follow the guidance signal. We have a repair bay that can accommodate your vessel class. Is anyone aboard injured? No injuries. Just ship damage. Glad to hear it. Armstrong's Forge will be ready for you. Welcome to Earth, Captain. The channel went quiet. The guidance signal appeared on the navigation screen, a clean, steady beam leading them toward one of the orbital structures. As the Gentle Whisper followed it in, the structure grew on their screens, and Thial felt her legs go weak. It was a shipyard, but not like any shipyard she had ever seen. It was enormous, a sprawling city of metal and light hanging in the darkness of space. Docking arms extended in every direction. Ships of unfamiliar design sat in construction cradles. The whole thing hummed with energy and purpose and life. Dorok appeared in the bridge doorway. He had left his engineering station and walked all the way up to see it with his own eyes. He stood beside Thial, all 6 eyes fixed on the growing shape of the human station. Captain, he said slowly, what kind of primitive species builds something like that? Thial shook her head. On the floor, Pickley groaned softly but did not wake up. I do not think, Thial said quietly, that they are primitive at all. The Gentle Whisper drifted forward, small and broken and barely alive, into the arms of a world that should not have been ready for them, but was. The docking clamps caught the Gentle Whisper like gentle hands catching a wounded bird. The ship groaned as it settled, and somewhere deep in the hull, something made a sound that Gorok later described as the noise an engine makes right before it gives up on life. But they were down. They were safe. The airlock opened, and Captain Thial stepped out onto the deck of Armstrong's Forge with 2 of her 4 hands, clasped tightly behind her back, and the other 2 held stiff at her sides. She was trying very hard to look like a calm and dignified representative of the Velthary Concord. She was not succeeding. The shipyard was even more impressive from inside. The docking bay alone was large enough to hold 10 ships the size of the Gentle Whisper. The ceiling rose so high above them that small transport vehicles flew across it like birds. The air smelled of metal and oil and something warm that Thial could not identify. Everywhere she looked, humans moved with speed and purpose, shouting to each other, carrying tools, climbing over ship hulls like insects. A woman walked toward them. She was short and wide-shouldered, with dark hair pulled back tight and hands that were covered in grease stains. She wore heavy work clothes and boots that clanked on the metal floor. Her face carried a grin so wide and so confident that it made Thyle immediately nervous. "Captain Ranvos?" the woman said, extending a hand. "Elena Vargas, Dockmaster. Welcome aboard." Thyle carefully took the offered hand with one of hers. The human's grip was surprisingly firm. "Thank you, Dockmaster Vargas. We are grateful for your assistance. Our situation is bad." "Yeah, we can see that," Elena said cheerfully, already looking past Thyle at the gentle whisper. "Your port engine housing is cracked in 3 places. Your containment matrix is held together with what I really hope is not just adhesive tape. And I'm pretty sure your shield generator is running on pure stubbornness at this point." She looked back at Thyle. "Don't worry. We'll fix you up." Before Thyle could respond, a tall man in a clean dark uniform appeared beside Elena. He stood straight, moved smoothly, and smiled in a way that was perfectly warm and perfectly controlled. Everything about him said military. "Captain Ranvos, I'm Lieutenant Commander Reese Okafor, Earth Defense Fleet Liaison. It's a pleasure to meet you." He paused. "I understand you had a run-in with Krithan raiders?" Thyle blinked. "How did you?" "The damage pattern on your hull. Krithan plasma cannons leave a very specific signature." His smile did not change. "We've been studying them for some time." Thyle felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. This man knew things. He knew things he should not know, and he was being very polite about it, which somehow made it worse. A commotion at the airlock drew everyone's attention. Gorak had emerged from the ship and was immediately surrounded by a small swarm of human engineers. At the center of the swarm was a woman who moved like she had been given too much energy and not enough body to hold it. She was already talking, fast, loud, and with wild hand gestures. "Oh, this is beautiful. Look at this matrix design. It's crystalline-based, right? Veltary standard? But you've modified the resonance frequency, haven't you? Clever. Very clever. Okay, but the problem is here. See, this junction point. The stress load is all wrong for the modified frequency. We can fix that. Actually, we can do better than fix it. I have an idea. Who is this person?" Gorak said, all 6 eyes blinking rapidly. "That's Patch," Elena said. "Dr. Priyananda Kumar. Best xeno-engineer on the station. Probably best in the fleet. Don't try to keep up with her. Nobody can." Patch had already pulled a panel off the side of the gentle whisper and was examining the internals with a scanner in one hand and a wrench in the other. "Okay, so what if, and hear me out, we don't just repair the containment matrix? What if we rebuild it using a hybrid design? Your crystalline structure paired with our composite lattice framework. It would triple your energy output. Maybe more." Gorak stared at her. He had been an engineer for 30 years. He had kept ships alive through wars, storms, and budget cuts. He had never in his life heard someone casually suggest tripling an engine's output like it was a minor adjustment. "That is not possible," he said carefully. "It's absolutely possible. I did it on a Dralith cargo hauler last month." The captain cried. "Happy tears. Come on, let me show you the workshop." She grabbed Gorak's arm, or tried to, since his arm was made of something close to solid rock, and pulled him toward the engineering bay. After a moment of stunned resistance, Gorik followed. Thyle heard him mutter something in Dralith that she was fairly sure translated to, "These people are insane." Reese guided Thyle toward a quieter area of the station, an observation lounge with wide windows looking out over the shipyard. He offered her a seat and asked if she would like refreshments. Thyle, still overwhelmed, simply nodded. A few minutes later, a small cup was placed before her. The liquid inside was dark, nearly black, and it gave off a rich, warm smell that she had never encountered before. "What is this?" she asked. "Coffee," Reese said. "It's a drink we make from roasted plant seeds. Most humans can't function without it. Please, try it." Thiel lifted the cup with her lower right hand and took a small sip. The effect was immediate. Her eyes went wide. Her bioluminescent skin, which normally glowed a soft blue, flared so bright that the entire lounge was flooded with brilliant white light. Reese shielded his eyes. A passing engineer dropped his tools. Someone down the corridor shouted in surprise. Thiel set the cup down with shaking hands. All four of them. "What?" she said breathlessly. "Isn't this?" "Caffeine, mostly," Reese said, blinking spots out of his vision. "Are you all right?" "I am." Thiel paused. She felt awake. Not just regular awake. She felt like she had been sleeping her entire life, and only now, at this moment, had she truly opened her eyes. "I am very all right. May I have more?" Reese smiled. "Welcome to Earth, Captain." Meanwhile, somewhere in the station's public network hub, Pickley had recovered from his faint and discovered what the humans called the Internet. Within 2 hours, he had found something called cat videos and had not moved since. A kind human technician had brought him a blanket and a snack. He did not notice. Over the next several days, the repairs to the gentle Whisper went far beyond anything Thiel had expected. What started as a simple fix became a complete transformation. Patch and her team, with Garuk working alongside them in growing amazement, rebuilt the engine system from the ground up. They installed new shield generators that were twice as powerful as the originals. They upgraded the sensor array. They added weapons, actual weapons, to a ship that had never carried anything more dangerous than a strongly worded diplomatic message. "Your ship did not have any guns," Patch explained, as if this was a personal offense. "We fixed that." "We did not ask for guns," Thiel said. "You didn't ask for the engine upgrade either, and you're not giving that back." She had a point. On the fourth evening, Reese invited Thiel for dinner. They sat in a small room with a view of the stars, and he asked her about the Krithin attack. His questions were careful and specific. Where had the patrol appeared? How many ships? What formation? What weapons did they use? How did they communicate? Thiel answered honestly, and as she did, she noticed something that troubled her. Reese was not surprised by any of her answers. He nodded at each detail, like someone confirming what he already knew. "You know about the Krithin," she said. It was not a question. "We know quite a lot about the Krithin," Reese said. "We've been watching the galaxy for a long time, Captain. We chose not to introduce ourselves, but we have been paying attention. Why? Why watch and not speak?" Reese set down his fork. "Because we wanted to be ready. Not just ready to say hello. Ready to help if help was needed." He looked at her with those calm, careful eyes. "Is help needed, Captain?" Before Thiel could answer, her communication device activated with an emergency signal. She looked at the message and felt the blood drain from her face. Her skin went dark, almost gray, the Valkyrie sign of deep fear. The Krithin Dominion had launched a full invasion of Concord space. 3 border systems had already fallen. The Concord fleet was in retreat, and the path of the invasion led straight toward her homeworld. Thiel looked up at Reese. Her hands were trembling. He looked back at her with steady eyes and said, very quietly, "I think it's time you met some people." The shuttle dropped below the surface of Earth's moon and into a tunnel carved deep into the rock. Thiel watched through the window as they descended, past layers of reinforced walls. past security checkpoints that scanned them with technology she did not recognize, past corridors that stretched away into the distance like the roots of some enormous metal tree. Reese sat across from her, calm as always. He had not said much during the flight from Armstrong's Forge. He did not need to. The emergency message from the Concorde was still burning in Tyle's mind, and every minute that passed was a minute her homeworld was closer to destruction. The shuttle landed in a vast underground hangar, and Reese led her through a series of corridors to a set of heavy doors that opened at his approach. Behind them was a room that made Thyle stop walking. It was a command center, but not like any command center she had seen before. The Concorde had its war rooms, its strategy chambers, its halls of debate. They were formal, decorated, designed to impress visitors with the weight of civilization. This room was nothing like that. This room was built to fight. Holographic star maps filled the air, not small display maps, but enormous three-dimensional projections that showed entire sectors of the galaxy in real time. Ship positions moved across them like glowing insects. Data streams ran along the walls in continuous rivers of light. Hundreds of officers sat at stations, monitoring, analyzing, communicating. And at the center of it all, standing before the largest map with her hands clasped behind her back, was a woman who radiated authority the way a star radiates heat. She was older, with silver hair cut short and dark skin lined by years of hard decisions. She wore a uniform that was simple and clean, without decoration, because she clearly did not need decoration. When she turned to look at Tyle, her eyes were calm and deep, like water that went down forever. "Captain Ranvos," she said. Her voice was soft, but it carried. "I'm Fleet Admiral Josephine Mwangi. Thank you for coming." Beside her stood a man who was almost her opposite in appearance, shorter, rounder, with a kind face and warm eyes behind small glasses. He smiled at Tyle in a way that reminded her of her grandfather. He looked like someone who would offer you tea and tell you stories. He looked harmless, and Tyle did not trust that impression for even 1 second. "Ambassador Kenji Tadashi," the man said, bowing slightly. "Earth's designated representative for first contact situations. I've been looking forward to meeting you, Captain." Tyle looked around the command center. On the maps, she could see the Krithan invasion, the advancing fleets, the fallen systems, the retreating Concorde forces. Earth had all of this information. They were tracking the war in real time, with a level of detail that the Concorde's own intelligence division probably did not have. "How long have you been watching?" Tyle asked. "Long enough," Admiral Mwangi said. She gestured to the map. "The Krithan Dominion has committed approximately 500 capital ships to this offensive, supported by over 1,000 smaller vessels. They have been building toward this for 50 years. Their supply lines are extended but well protected. Their command structure is centralized around a war commander named Drakethol, who has never lost a campaign." She paused and looked directly at Tyle. "Your Concorde fleet has roughly 200 ships capable of combat. Your doctrine is defensive. Your weapons technology is 2 generations behind the Krithan. Your political leadership has spent decades choosing diplomacy over preparation." There was no judgment in her voice, just facts. "At current rates, the Concorde will fall within 6 months. Your homeworld will be taken in 3. Tyle felt like the floor had been pulled out from under her. She had known things were bad. She had not known they were this bad. Hearing it said so plainly, so calmly, by someone who clearly understood every detail of the situation, was like being hit in the chest. "Why are you telling me this?" Tyle whispered. Ambassador Tadashi stepped forward. His voice was gentle. "Because we would like to help, Captain." He let the words sit in the air for a moment before continuing. "Earth has maintained a defense fleet for the past 60 years. We built it quietly, away from the eyes of the galaxy, because we believed that one day it would be needed. That day has come. He adjusted his glasses. We are offering the full deployment of Earth's fleet, 312 warships, to reinforce the Concord in its defense against the Krithan Dominion. Thyle stared at him. 312 warships. The number echoed in her head. That was more than the entire Concord combat fleet. In exchange, Tadashi continued, we ask for formal recognition of Earth as a sovereign member of the galactic community, trade agreements, cultural exchange, and a seat at the Concord Council table, not above anyone else. Beside them. You have been hidden for decades, Thyle said slowly. You have technology that could have given you power over half the galaxy. And you want a seat at the table? We want to be good neighbors, Tadashi said simply. We've had enough of being alone. Thyle looked at Admiral Mwangi. And your fleet. Your soldiers. You would send them to die for species they have never met? Mwangi's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. Something old and deep and fierce. Captain Ranvas, she said, humanity spent most of its history fighting itself. We have seen what happens when good people stand by and do nothing while others suffer. We swore, a long time ago, that if we ever had the power to help, we would not hesitate. She paused. No one should face annihilation alone. The room was quiet. The hum of the command center continued around them. The soft sounds of officers working, data flowing, the galaxy turning. But in that small space between Thyle and the two humans, there was silence. Thyle thought about her homeworld. She thought about the Concord Council, with its endless debates and its careful traditions and its deep suspicion of anything new. She thought about Chancellor Vethis, who would likely rather lose a war than accept help from an unknown species. The Concord may refuse, Thyle said. Our leaders are proud. They are slow to trust. Tadashi nodded. We know. That is why we are not simply sending our fleet. We are asking you to carry our message. You are a Concord captain. Your people will listen to you, and if they still refuse, Mwangi answered that one. Then we will be waiting, just beyond the border, for when they change their minds. We are very patient, Captain. But the Krithan are not. Thyle closed her eyes. She thought about the crew of the Gentle Whisper, still aboard the station, trusting her to make the right choice. She thought about Gorok, who had laughed for the first time in years in the company of human engineers. She thought about Peakley, who had found something to be fascinated by instead of afraid of. She opened her eyes. I will carry your message. Tadashi smiled warmly. Mwangi gave a single sharp nod. You will not go alone, Mwangi said. She touched a control, and the star map shifted to show a formation of ships, human ships, assembled in orbit around Earth. At the center was something that made Thyle's breath catch. It was a warship, but calling it a warship was like calling a hurricane a breeze. It was enormous, sleek, and powerful in a way that was almost beautiful. The name on its hull read ES Prometheus. A vanguard fleet, Mwangi said. 40 ships, led by our flagship. They will escort you to the Concord. A show of good faith. And good force, Tadashi added, still smiling. Thyle returned to Armstrong's Forge to prepare for departure. She found Gorok standing on the observation deck, staring at the Prometheus through the window. The ship hung in space like a sleeping predator, quiet, still, and absolutely terrifying. I have been an engineer for 30 years, Gorok said, without looking at Thyle. I have seen warships from every species in the Concord. None of them look like that. That ship was built by people who understand war the way a river understands stone. Deeply, personally, over a very long time. He turned to face her with all 6 eyes. What kind of species builds something like that, and then asks permission before using it? From behind them, Peakley's voice came, quiet and distracted. He was still looking at his tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be an endless collection of human images with text on them. "A very dangerous one," he said. For once, nobody argued with him. The gentle whisper launched the next morning, if morning meant anything in space. It was faster now, stronger, armed. It barely felt like the same ship. Beside it, the Prometheus and its escort fleet moved into formation, and together they jumped to faster-than-light speed. Thiel stood on her bridge, watching the stars stretch into lines of light. In her lower hands, she held a cup of coffee. She had made sure to bring a large supply. Its warmth spread through her fingers and into her chest. She was afraid. She was more afraid than she had ever been. But underneath the fear, burning quietly like a small and stubborn fire, there was something else. Hope. She drank her coffee, and her skin glowed bright enough to light the bridge. The Concorde Emergency Capital Station, Hallam Prime, was in chaos when the gentle whisper dropped out of faster-than-light speed. Refugee ships crowded every docking port. Communication channels were flooded with distress signals from falling border worlds. The station's defense fleet, a collection of lightly armed patrol ships, had formed a nervous ring around the structure, weapons hot, sensors scanning the darkness for Krithan shadows. Then the human vanguard fleet appeared. 40 warships materialized out of F2L in perfect formation, surrounding the gentle whisper like wolves around a shepherd. They were angular, dense, covered in weapon arrays and armor plating that seemed to swallow light. At their center, the Prometheus hung in space like a mountain that had learned to fly. The Concorde defense fleet panicked. Weapons locked. Targeting systems screamed. For 3 terrible seconds, the entire situation balanced on the edge of a knife. Thiel's voice cut through every channel like a blade. "This is Captain Thiel Ranvos of the Velthary Concorde vessel Gentle Whisper. Authorization code Theta 77. Stand down immediately. These ships are allies. I repeat, stand down." The defense fleet hesitated. Then, one by one, weapons were lowered. The knife's edge passed. Thiel was escorted to the emergency council session within the hour. The council chamber was a wide circular room designed to hold representatives from all 12 species of the Concorde. Today, it was full, and the air was thick with fear. Species that usually argued over trade taxes and border regulations were now staring at war reports, showing the destruction of entire systems. At the center sat High Chancellor Vethis, ancient even by Velthary standards, with skin so old it had turned from blue to deep purple. His 4 hands rested on the arms of his chair, perfectly still. His eyes, dim with age but sharp with intelligence, fixed on Thiel as she entered. She told them everything. Earth, the humans, their fleet, their offer. The room exploded into argument. Some delegates were desperate. The Krithan were coming, and any help was welcome. Others were suspicious. A species that had hidden itself for decades, that had watched the galaxy without revealing itself, that had built a war fleet in secret. Could such a species be trusted? Chancellor Vethis raised one hand, and the room went silent. "You ask us," he said slowly, "to place the survival of the Concorde in the hands of creatures we have never met. From a world we classified as primitive, who have been spying on us for generations." Thiel stood her ground. "I ask you to accept help from the only people offering it." Vethis studied her for a long time. Then he looked past her to where Ambassador Tadashi stood waiting in the gallery entrance. Patient and calm, his hands folded before him. "Speak human," Vethis said. Tadashi walked to the center of the chamber. He looked small among the alien delegates, smaller than most species in the room. But he stood straight and he spoke clearly. "High Chancellor, honored council members, I will not pretend that our secrecy was not a choice, or that our preparations were accidental. We saw the galaxy as it was, and we prepared for what we believed was coming. We were right. He paused. I am not here to ask for your trust. Trust takes time, and time is something you do not have. I am here to offer our strength freely and to ask only for the chance to earn that trust through action. The council voted. It was close. 7 species in favor, 4 against, 1 abstaining. The joint operation was approved. The combined fleet assembled at the Silver System, the last major defensive, positioned between the Krithan Advance and the Concorde's core worlds. The Concorde committed everything it had, 180 warships, most of them older models with outdated weapons and exhausted crews. The human vanguard of 40 ships took position on the flank. They were not enough. Everyone knew they were not enough. The Krithan Armada arrived like a dark wave. Over 500 capital ships, supported by swarms of fighters, spread across the system in a formation designed to crush resistance through sheer overwhelming force. At the center of the formation, the command ship of War Commander Drakethul, a massive, scarred dreadnought called the Iron Verdict, broadcast a message to the defenders. Drakethul's face appeared on every screen. He was Krithan, tall, armored in natural bone plating, with eyes like hot coals and a mouth full of teeth designed for tearing. He smiled when he spoke, and it was not a pleasant smile. "Concorde weaklings," he said. "You have gathered your little fleet to die in one place instead of many. How considerate." His eyes moved across the display, and he noticed the human ships. "And you have brought pets. Unknown vermin in ugly ships. How sad for them." He cut the channel. The battle began. The Krithan attacked in waves, heavy, brutal, designed to break morale as much as break ships. The Concorde fleet held its formation, fighting with the desperate courage of people defending their homes. Weapons fire lit the darkness. Ships burned. The Concorde line bent under the pressure. Then Admiral Manji, watching from the bridge of the Prometheus, spoke 2 words over the fleet channel. "All ships." The human fleet moved. What happened next would be studied by military historians across the galaxy for centuries. The 40 human warships did not simply charge into battle. They cut through the Krithan formation like surgical instruments, striking at command ships, communication relays, and supply vessels with terrifying precision. They moved in coordinated groups of 3 and 4, covering each other, drawing enemy fire and then punishing it. Their electronic warfare systems blinded Krithan sensors, turning organized formations into confused clusters that were then torn apart. The Prometheus led the assault directly into the heart of the Krithan fleet. It absorbed fire from 6 dreadnoughts simultaneously, its shields flaring bright blue but holding, and responded with weapons that punched through Krithan armor as if it were cloth. In the first hour alone, 14 Krithan capital ships were destroyed or disabled by the flagship alone. Drakethul, for the first time in his long career, felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. These were not Concorde ships. These did not fight like anything he had seen before. They fought like predators, fast, smart, and absolutely without mercy. But the Krithan were many, and they were strong, and they did not retreat easily. The battle raged for hours. Both sides bled. The space around Silver filled with debris and fire and the ghosts of shattered vessels. The moment that changed everything was not a great victory. It was a small one. On the edge of the battle, a Veltri hospital ship, the Mercy of Stars, carrying over 2,000 wounded from the border systems, found itself cut off from the fleet. A Krithan dreadnought turned toward it, weapons charging. The hospital ship had no weapons, no shields, no chance. The human destroyer ESS Resolve was nearby. It was already damaged, one engine gone, hull breached in 3 places, half its weapons offline. Its captain, a woman named Sarah Chun, looked at her tactical display, looked at the hospital ship, and made her decision without hesitation. The Resolve moved between the dreadnought and the hospital ship. It planted itself in the path of destruction and opened fire with everything it had left. The dreadnought fired back. The Resolve shook. Armor peeled away. Systems failed. Crew members died. Captain Chun held her position. 11 minutes. The Resolve held for 11 minutes, absorbing fire that should have destroyed it 3 times over. It fought and it burned and it refused to move. The Mercy of Stars escaped. 2,000 wounded reached safety. The Resolve broke apart in silence, as all ships do in the void. There were no survivors. Across the battlefield, the Concorde fleet watched. Every ship, every crew. They saw a human vessel, crewed by strangers, by people who owed them nothing, sacrifice itself for a hospital ship full of aliens they had never met. Something changed in that moment. Something that could never be unchanged. Drakethul looked at his tactical display. He saw his fleet bleeding. He saw his formations broken. He saw the human ships still fighting, still pushing, still refusing to stop. And behind them, the Concorde fleet was no longer just defending. It was fighting with a fury he had never seen from them before. The humans had given them something more dangerous than weapons. They had given them a reason to believe they could win. For the first time in his undefeated career, Drakethul gave the order to retreat. The Crithan fleet pulled back. Slowly at first, then faster, then in a full rout, disappearing into FDL and leaving the Selver system in the hands of the defenders. Silence fell over the battlefield. On the bridge of the Gentle Whisper, Thyle stood perfectly still. Her skin was dark, not with fear, but with grief. Through the window, she could see the debris field where the Resolve had been. Small pieces of metal drifted through space, catching the light of distant stars. That was all that was left. Metal and light and memory. Behind her, Gorak entered the bridge quietly. He carried 2 cups of coffee. He set one on the console beside Thyle. The other, he placed on the empty seat at the communications station. The seat where, on a human ship, someone like Captain Chun might have sat. For them, he said simply. Thyle nodded. She could not speak. Across the Concorde fleet, ship after ship opened their communication channels. One by one, in voices shaking with emotion, crews from 12 different species broadcast a single word in Galactic Common. Thank you. The word echoed across the void, repeated hundreds of times, until it became less a word and more a sound. The sound of a galaxy that had just learned what it meant to have someone stand beside you in the dark. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Admiral Mwangi listened to the transmissions. Her face was still. Her eyes were bright. She said nothing. There was nothing to say that the silence did not say better. 3 months after the Battle of Selver, the galaxy was a different place. Earth's full fleet had deployed. 312 warships spread across Concorde space, working alongside the reformed Concorde Armada to push the Crithan back system by system. Human engineers had set up repair stations at every major Concorde port, and alien ships that passed through their hands came back transformed, faster, tougher, better armed. Alien captains started showing up with damage they did not actually have, just to get the upgrades. Gorak had been appointed as the official engineering liaison between Earth and the Concorde. He spent his days surrounded by human engineers, arguing loudly about engine designs and loving every moment of it. He had gained weight, which for a Dralith meant his stone-like skin had developed new layers. He said it was the coffee. He drank 6 cups a day. He was not alone. Coffee had become the single most traded commodity in Concorde space within weeks of its introduction. Every species reacted to it differently. The Velthari glowed. The Dralith became extremely talkative. The SN vibrated at a frequency that made nearby glass shake. One species, the Palori, claimed it gave them temporary psychic abilities, though this was never proven. A black market emerged almost instantly. Smugglers who once moved weapons and illegal technology now moved small brown beans across the galaxy, and they made more money doing it. Pickley had become something of a celebrity. His obsession with human culture had turned him into the galaxy's foremost expert on human social behavior, communication, and something he called internet culture. He had started using human expressions in everyday conversation. He quoted things called memes in official tactical briefings, and while no one else understood them, his confidence had grown so much that nobody dared question him. The small, anxious insectoid who had fainted at the sound of a human voice was gone. In his place was someone who still worried about everything, but now did so while wearing a human baseball cap he had been given and never took off. Thyle had been appointed as the permanent Concord Earth liaison because she was the only Concord officer who could match the pace of human operations. She credited the coffee, but the truth was simpler. She had changed. The cautious, rule-following captain who had been afraid to land on an unclassified planet was gone. In her place was someone who had seen the worst the galaxy could offer and had found, against all odds, something worth fighting for. The gentle whisper had changed too. After 3 months of human upgrades, modifications, additions, and what Guru called improvements that nobody asked for but everybody needed, the ship was virtually unrecognizable. It was faster than most Concord fighters, tougher than some cruisers, and armed well enough to make Krythan patrol ships think twice. Thyle had stopped protesting the changes after the second month. The ship was better. She was better. Everything was better. But the war was not over. The Krythan Dominion, beaten at Selver and pushed back across a dozen systems, was wounded and desperate. Drakethel had been humiliated, and a humiliated Krythan commander was a dangerous thing. He gathered every ship his empire had left, every warship, every armed transport, every vessel capable of carrying a weapon, and committed them to one final, massive strike. His target was Earth itself. The logic was brutal and simple. Kill the source. Destroy the human homeworld, and the human fleet would collapse. Without Earth, the strange alliance that had turned the war would fall apart. The Concord would lose its spine, and the Dominion would finish what it had started. The Krythan fleet, over 600 ships, everything they had, jumped toward Sol. Earth detected them coming. The defense network, built over decades, activated in full. Orbital platforms powered up. Ground-based systems came online. The home fleet, held in reserve for exactly this possibility, moved into formation around the planet. And then something happened that no one expected. Not the humans. Not the Krythan. Not even Thyle, who thought she had stopped being surprised. The Concord fleet came. Not just a token force. Not just a symbolic gesture. The full weight of the Velthary Concord. Every ship from every species that could be spared from the front lines jumped to the Sol system to defend Earth. Ships arrived in waves. Velthary cruisers. Dralith heavy transports hastily fitted with weapons. Essen scout ships. Palori frigates. Species that had never left their home systems before sent whatever they had. Old ships. New ships. Ships that had no business being in a battle but came anyway. They came because the humans had come for them. It was that simple. It was that powerful. Thyle stood on the bridge of the Gentle Whisper as her ship took position in the combined fleet. Through the windows, she could see Earth, blue and green and white, wrapped in clouds, impossibly beautiful. Around it, ships from 13 species formed a wall of metal and light and determination. She opened a channel to the fleet. This is Captain Thyle Ranvas, Concord Earth Liaison. All Concord vessels form on the human defense line. Today, we do not fight as 12 species. We do not fight as 13. We fight as one. The Krithen arrived in a storm of light and fury. 600 ships dropped out of FTL in attack formation. Dregthul's command ship at the center, weapons already firing. The battle was the largest the galaxy had ever seen. The Krithen fought with the strength of desperation. They knew this was their last chance. Dregthul drove his forces forward with savage fury, breaking through the outer defense lines, pushing toward Earth with everything he had. But the defenders held. Human ships and Concord ships fought side by side, covering each other, protecting each other, dying for each other. A Velthari cruiser shielded a damaged human frigate. A Dralith transport ran the Krithen destroyer that was targeting an Earth orbital platform. A Cessna scout ship, small and fast, flew into the heart of the Krithen formation to deliver targeting data for the human heavy weapons, knowing it would not fly out again. The Krithen had numbers. The defenders had something else. They had something that Dregthul, for all his cunning, had never understood and could never defeat. They were not fighting because they had to. They were fighting because they chose to. Every ship, every crew, every person in that fleet had looked at the strangers beside them and decided, freely and without hesitation, that those strangers were worth dying for. The Gentle Whisper and the Prometheus found Dregthul's flagship in the chaos of battle. They attacked together, the small Velthari courier ship and the enormous human dreadnought, side by side, pouring fire into the Iron Verdict until its shields failed and its engines died. Dregthul was captured alive. His fleet, seeing their commander fall, shattered. Ships scattered in every direction. Some surrendered. Some fled. The Krithen Dominion, the terror of the galaxy for half a century, broke apart in the skies above Earth. The war was over. The ceremony took place on the surface of Earth, in a city called Geneva, in a building that the humans said had been used for international cooperation for centuries. Thyle thought that was fitting. The hall was large and filled with light, and representatives of all 13 species, 12 Concord members and humanity, gathered to sign the accord that would formally welcome Earth into the galactic community. Ambassador Tadashi signed for Earth. His hand was steady, and his smile was warm. Behind him, Admiral Manji stood in dress uniform, quiet and proud, her silver hair bright under the lights. Chancellor Vethis, humbled and grateful in a way Thyle had never seen before, reached across the table and took Tadashi's hand in all 4 of his own. "Welcome," Vethis said simply. "Welcome home." That evening, Thyle sat alone in a room overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. She held a recording device and spoke her final log entry as liaison officer. "We came to Earth because we were broken," she said. "Our ship was failing, our options were gone, and we had nowhere else to turn. We expected nothing. We found everything." She paused. "The humans did not save us with their weapons, though their weapons are remarkable. They did not save us with their technology, though their technology is extraordinary. They saved us by being what they are, a species that looks at strangers and sees family, a species that builds warships and then asks permission before using them, a species that will sacrifice everything for people they have never met, simply because it is the right thing to do." She took a sip of coffee. Her skin glowed softly in the fading light. "We came to Earth for repairs," she said. "We left with enhancements, coffee, and a complete war fleet. But what we truly left with was something much more important. We left with the knowledge that we are not alone in this galaxy, and that the people standing beside us are very, very good." She smiled. "Also, the coffee is extraordinary. I cannot stress this enough." She ended the recording. Far away, In the cold dark between stars, a small freighter limped through space. It was battered, leaking atmosphere, its engines failing. Its crew, 4 beings from a species the Concorde had never contacted, huddled on their bridge and watched their power levels drop toward 0. Then their communication system crackled to life. A voice came through, calm, warm, professional, speaking in a language they did not know, but which their translation systems could barely interpret. Unidentified vessel, this is Earth Orbital Control. We have detected your approach and your ship's distress signatures. Welcome to the Sol System. Do you require assistance? The crew looked at each other. The captain, trembling, answered, Yes, please. We need help. Understood. Follow the guidance signal. We have a repair bay ready for you. A pause. Also, do you drink hot beverages? We have something we think you should try. The small broken ship followed the light toward Earth, and the galaxy turned. And somewhere in the darkness, a new story began.